Oh, good day. Well, I'll get started. It's now 8 o'clock, so I'll start off.
Introduce yourself for the video.
So, for the purpose of this video, my name's Tim Jensen. I'm VK2BT. This talk tonight, it was very difficult to encompass in just a few words. It sort of became just a rambling description. So, basically, it involves two trips that I did to Europe. One was in this year for 6 weeks, and one was last year for 5 weeks. So I've sort of melded some of the both those trips together to make a hopefully seamless presentation. So there are a couple of different subjects. So one of them is Friedrichshafen. So Friedrichshafen is the Europe's largest hamfest. So I'll start with that. So it's certainly Friedrichshafen, but also more than that. Just talking about Friedrichshafen can't take up a whole 3 or 4 hours, which I intend taking up. So we'll start with that. So first of all, I'm going to start with a couple of questions. And as I said, there will be a quiz at the end. And so everyone needs to pay attention.
Get your phones out.
I'm recording.
So as we go through, I'll be answering these. So apart from Europe's largest hamfest, what else is Friedrichshafen famous for? So Friedrichshafen is one of the 3 largest in the world. So this is Europe's largest. There's Dayton in the US, and there's one in Japan, which is a large one as well. Not quite Wyong. So the next question is, who was the first recipient of the Samuel Morse Medal? And as a hint, he won it in 1928. Samuel Morse, of course, invented Morse code. The next question is, after the siege of Stalingrad, where was the longest siege in World War II? Next question, how many vertical takeoff jet transport aircraft have been built? Vertical takeoff jet transport aircraft. Where is the longest sundial in the world? Where is Europe's largest synagogue? And what was the first aircraft to fly more than 1 million miles? So there's a few things to think about, so work on that. If anyone has an answer to any of those now, feel free.
Is Trieste where the largest synagogue is?
No. No. No.
Friedrichshafen section.
We'll see. I'm not saying anything. Right, so let's start with Friedrichshafen. So where is it? So here's a map showing where it is in Europe. So basically it's right on the southern border of Germany is where it physically is. And to zoom in a bit more, there it is exactly there. So it's on the shores of Lake Constance, which is, we call it Lake Constance. The Germans call it Bundessee, or you must... excuse my German pronunciation, but anyway, we call it Lake Constance. And across the other side is Switzerland. So this lake forms a border between Germany and Switzerland. And the fact that it is on a lake is somewhat prophetic, which we'll get to in a while. And so here it is. This is the lake side. This is Friedrichshafen. On the lake, it's very pleasant. It's a beautiful spot. It really is a beautiful spot. And over there is Switzerland on the far side. So there is, as I said, an annual hamfest, which has been held there for 46 years, although it wasn't held during the COVID, for 1 year during COVID. I think it was only 1 year it wasn't held. And it is held in this series of buildings here, which is a purpose-built conference centre. So they have lots of conferences here, lots of conferences all year round. So as you can see, there are lots and lots of buildings. This can encompass lots of people. So the Hamfest this year had more than 11,000 visitors attended. There were 149 commercial exhibitors and 243 flea market exhibitors. And so they're held in a number of these halls. So if you look in the halls, this is the sort of thing we see, the usual, as you'd imagine, people set up and other people wandering around having a look. People looking, lots of people, lots of exhibitors, lots of good stuff there. Lots of really good stuff. That's the problem to us poor buggers that live in Australia is, how do we get the stuff home? So, Hilberling, what do we know about these radios?
They're very expensive.
Very expensive. So here we go. There's a 15,000 euro radio, so approaching $30,000, let's say. Very nice. Oh, undoubtedly very nice radio. Loads of second-hand test equipment for sale. Loads and loads. Loads of everything. Anything you could possibly want. But as I said, unfortunately, coming from this side of the world, we're limited by what we can carry home. Now, here's some interesting stuff. Anyone want to take a guess at what these are?
That's the machine. Yeah, big machine.
Very good, very good. But these, at closer examination, are not. They've got Cyrillic script on them. So these are out of the Russian copies of an Enigma machine. They had lots and lots of these Russian machines which have been stripped down and selling for spare parts. And so these ones are the real Enigma machines, and you can buy everything, all the spare parts for an Enigma. I'm just amazed at how many bits and pieces there are.
America kept on selling them for 25 years after the war, so it's not surprising.
Well, the British did, yes. But it's sort of... it interests me that everyone knows the Enigma machine, but if you read any of those books about Bletchley Park, and I'm pointing to Sean here, the Enigma wasn't the most difficult code to break. The most difficult one was the telex code the Germans used, the Fish series of codes. But yet no one knows. Lorenz is one of them. No one knows about those. Everyone knows the Enigma, and I think it's the name. The name has got this good sort of ring to it. So everyone knows that. But yeah, lots of, if you wanted to, and there's a replica someone's made selling for 59,000 euro out of bits and pieces they've put together. But, it's beautifully made, and these are the original wheels and everything. This is a nice one. And then also here's two manual crypto machines. So one's a German, one's a Swiss crypto machines for manual cryptology. Just interesting stuff you see as you wander around. Here is a World War I British receiver, and I had some communication with Ross, who's not here tonight, a member of the club, about this one. It's the real deal. I don't know what price he was asking. The problem was, trying to talk, and a lot of these people spoke languages other than English, and it was difficult. And I was in a hurry to keep moving. So I never actually got to speak to this guy. I said, I'll come back. And I came back and it had gone. So I don't know. But yeah, that's an interesting one that Ross recognised. And then here we go. Dave, what do we see here?
Siemens T100.
Yeah, T100 teleprinter clacking away there. And so they had two of them set up. One was clacking to the other. And what they've got is, what these people... I sort of wondered whether I should show this. Maybe this proves that amateurs are nuts. But what these people have devised is this new thing called telex over the internet. So they've invented this, developed these interface so you could use your old mechanical telex machines and send telex over the internet.
What year would that machine have been made? The machine you showed us?
So this Siemens machine is a modern machine. So I don't know, what do you think that would have been in the late 90s we saw these ones? Where the T100, the previous ones, was the previous generation. This would have been in the 80s.
Yeah, I'd say those ones there would have been, 70s.
70, well, into the 80s, yeah, I think.
There's plenty of Morse code over the internet, so there's no reason why not have
Anyway.
the original digital mode.
Of course, a lot of Russian equipment. So all that was just Russian bits and pieces. Goodness knows what it all is, but there's lots of it. Lots and lots of it. And lots of a lot of the sellers seem to be from places like Italy and also the former Eastern Bloc companies. There seem to be a lot of Romanians and Bulgarians and sort of people that are, that I've never really come across, but you think, yeah, okay, it's just over the border.
Probably Latvia too, they had a big radio industry.
It could have been. I'll get onto the Baltic states in a while, but yes, it could have been. I just want to keep moving. There's just so much to see. It took me all day just to go around it once, and that was it. At the end of the day, I was buggered and I'd only been around once. So here's another interesting machine. This is a Russian Morse burst encoder device where you would preload the Morse message you wanted to send and then hit go, and it would blast it out at a really high bit rate. And it says there, what was it, 150 words a minute or something or other? Really fast. So it made it difficult to DF for a start. So that was just an interesting thing. That was just things I've just never seen before. And here was another Russian. This was a brand new thing. This was new in box. This was a Russian direction finding equipment that you mounted on your helmet. So it doesn't look foolish at all, does it? It does not look foolish. There's no way that looks foolish. You're wandering around with direction finding equipment mounted on your helmet. And apparently it was allegedly used by Russian special forces to find radar equipment. So they would ostensibly be dropped behind enemy lines to try to find radar sites to disable them. But this is a brand new one in box. It's never been used. And so you can see the price there, what's €200? Interesting things. On the wall there, they had a big map of the world where you could put a pin from the country that you came from. So this gives you an indication of where the participants came from. So, of course, most from Europe, but a few from other places. And I've zoomed into Australia. Interesting, I put one pin in for Sydney, but I think there should have been at least three. Because Barry, VK2BT, I heard was there. So I'm not too sure. I think
also Ray Robinson.
Okay, Ray Robinson was apparently there as well. Yeah, I was trying to think of the other person I sort of knew was there. So maybe people are a bit shy about putting pins in. And also Bernd Langer was there as an ex-member of the club who I contacted before this and spoke to him about that being there, and I'd hoped to catch up with him, but as it turned out, I just didn't have the time to catch up with him, unfortunately. And he didn't have his pin there. He sort of lives up in the Tweed Valley, but there's nothing there. But also they had this QSL wall where everyone just puts their QSL cards up, and as part of that QSL wall, there's Byrne's call sign, VK2IA. So he was there, but I never got to catch up with him, unfortunately. Albie Mangles, Albie buggered. Yeah. There's interesting things here. So here's a van. It's the equivalent of the German ACMA. So this is a van, and it's got an antenna at the top that you can't really see. It's truncated in this photograph, but they've got an extendable antenna. And then looking inside the van, they've got this. So this is what they use for tracking down interference or illegal radio transmissions or something. This is one.
antenna or?
Yes, on the roof. Yes, yeah. So quite nicely set up. A book that I would have liked to have bought, I looked at it, but unfortunately it was in German, was this book. So it talked about all radar in aircraft and things up until 1945, which would have been very interesting for me. I'd like to know exactly how sophisticated the radars were and what sort of indication you could get with the different antennas they had. And so there you can see a Messerschmitt 262A with VHF, or what looks like VHF radar, a couple of VHF radar on the nose there. And there's on the top left, maybe I think it might be a fire control radar, I think, from maybe I don't know, it might be from a flying fortress or something. It's got that look about it. It was in German, so it was. I looked at that, but in the end I thought, what am I going to do with that? They also launched a balloon there, so they did a weather balloon launch with a number of packages. So they had Amateur APRS was one of those packages. They had an amateur voice repeater was another one of those packages. An amateur digital repeater was another one of those packages, and I can't recall what the other one was. So they launched that, and that ended up over in Switzerland somewhere. I don't know whether they got it back, but that was sort of interesting to witness. So the next question. So here's one of our questions. What else is Friedrichshafen famous for? Nick has already said one thing. What else?
This is Germany.
So Friedrichshafen was the headquarters for the Dornier aircraft company. So here is one of the Dornier aircraft. This is from the 60s, and so this answers another one. This was the only vertical takeoff and landing transport aircraft ever made and ever flew. Is this thing at the Dornier Museum? It had two Rolls-Royce Pegasus engines providing the thrust on under wing, and then on those nacelles at the far end, each of those nacelles had four other jet engines to provide vertical thrust. So it was a strange aircraft. Apparently it was, it was successful. It flew. They built a couple of them, but it never progressed for reasons which I'm not too sure. The Germans were concerned at the time, heading in the late 50s into the 60s, about the Cold War, and if they lost their airfields to German bombing, so they wanted to be able to operate their air force. So hence they had aircraft, and the same as the Swedes,
A lot of glass, doesn't it?
a lot of glass.
A lot of glass.
To operate off their autobahns, but also to do vertical takeoff. So they had a lot of focus on vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And this is one of them, which was an interesting thing. So there's one of the engine nacelles. There's some word about it. So this is called the Dornier 13 experimental aircraft, and it flew in
14 tonne.
16.
Yeah, 31.
So an interesting aircraft.
11 tonne of fuel in it. Yeah.
But then going back in time with the Dornier Aircraft Corporation, we've got the famous Dornier X flying boat. And I mentioned it was on Lake Constance, which I never really appreciated until now. That's why Dornier built so many flying boats and seaplanes, is because they're right on the lake. So you go, of course, that's why. That's...
Friedrichshafen doesn't mean harbour.
Sorry?
Friedrichshafen is Friedrichs harbour.
Yeah, but I just never put the two together till I was there. So there's the famous Dornier X that had 12 engines. It had 6 puller and 6 pusher propellers. It first flew in 1929. I built a number of those, but there's none in existence. So that's just a model, obviously. Next was this is another interesting Dornier experimental aircraft. And you can see in the museum, if you look down, you can see lots of aircraft there. They had lots of aircraft in this museum, which was great. This one, you look at it and you say, where are the engines? So where do I hear you say? Where are the engines? Where are the engines? Let's have another shot. There they are. Gee, the engine looks a bit bent, doesn't it? So this one, they had, it was a prop, obviously, a propeller engine, but they had, what did I do that for? But they're able to rotate the propellers to give semi-vertical takeoff and landing with this thing. So that was an interesting one. It had a stall speed of 15 miles an hour, so it could go really slowly. And you think, 15 miles an hour? That's amazing.
Decapitating troops on a low class.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, an interesting aircraft, but again, it really, they flew the things and that, they did stuff with it, but they never developed it. Another interesting one is this one. You can see there's 3 engines, and this one was originally made during the Second World War, so this is an old one. So this is a Dornier, should have made that bigger, shouldn't I? A Dornier 24. So that was flown by the Spanish. The Spanish bought it, in 1943 and used it for decades, and eventually it's ended up back in the museum here. So it's just another little quirky aircraft.
Platform for ground effect?
The what, sorry?
The big platform at the sides of the fuselage.
No, because it's a flying boat, so it doesn't have floats. So, yes,
It's
that's to give. There's no external floats like a normal flying boat, so that was to give it stability in the water. And for some strange reason, there was also a Messerschmitt 109 there. I'm not too sure why a Messerschmitt was in a Dornier museum, but anyway, we just go with it. Okay, fine. That Messerschmitt 109 was the most produced aircraft ever. They made 33,000 varieties of that. There's no other aircraft come anywhere near being that many production models. That's the cockpit of it. Other strange things that Dornier were mucking around with is this thing, which is a unmanned helicopter, although they did have single-man helicopter things that were like this, that were basically tethered, and they worked on, help me out here, Eve, the reaction principle. So instead of having a tail rotor, they ejected the exhaust gases out through the rotor, which helps spin it and also prevented it, what the tail rotor prevents the whole thing turning around.
Driving it from torque from the body, from the fuselage.
Pretty much out.
So they were working on these things. So there it is. It's a Dornier 32 one-man helicopter. So it was tethered, could fly to 200 metres, and they put fuel up it, etc., etc., etc. Another variant is this one. So again, you can see it's only got one blade, and the other one's where the other blade of the propellers where the exhaust gases come out to spin it up. Very strange thing. Very, very strange. And what they're saying there is that basically where that was exactly where they did all the test work. But because they were so noisy, they said they built them 8 metre underground. The whole control centre, etc., where they used to do it was buried under the ground because it was so damn noisy. So interesting things, and they had some Dornier magazines there, and I didn't take a photograph, and I wish I had of, where they'd put a small radar on one of these things. And I note that's what they do nowadays, not with petrol engine, that's all gone. They use drones now to lift up radars, just small radars, just to get them up a couple of 100 metres. So they were ahead of the time. They, interesting. There's some other bits and pieces. I wasn't too sure what this thing was. I don't know whether it was a collapsible air traffic control system in a container or not, but I was being hassled. It was past closing time, and you will leave, you'll get out of here. And it's the story of my life with all these museums.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've got lots of aircraft. There's the outdoor display of aircraft and things. Okay, so what else is Friedrichshafen known for? And I don't know whether I heard Nick say, but Friedrichshafen is where Zeppelin built his Zeppelins. So not only is there a Dornier museum, there is a Zeppelin museum. In fact, Dornier worked with Zeppelin originally. Claude Dornier originally worked with Zeppelin in Friedrichshafen. So there is a Dornier museum. Now, anyone recognise this car? It's the Gaylord Gladiator. Well-known vehicle, built in Friedrichshafen.
It's still like hotcakes today.
It would. It's a beautiful looking vehicle. And here's another one. What's this one? And the giveaway, it's got Zeppelin written on it. It's the Maybach Zeppelin. So, there's two beautiful cars. So both of these were also produced in Friedrichshafen, these cars. And both of these were in the Zeppelin Museum. So there's another shot looking down on them. They're fantastic looking cars, the pair of them. The Maybach Zeppelin had a V12 engine in it, so I would suggest it wasn't a slouch. And to this day, they still fly Zeppelins, rigid dirigibles from Friedrichshafen. So that was a shot out of my hotel window, and it's landing exactly where the messe, where the hamfest is held. Just behind there is the Zeppelin hangar. Unfortunately, I didn't get to fly in a Zeppelin. There was a bit of a screw up there, but anyway, won't talk about that. Zeppelin Museum. So in the Zeppelin Museum, there's some, lots of interesting things. There's engines from Zeppelins. So how many Zeppelins were built prior to World War One? You want to take a guess? How many were built and flown prior to World War One? I'll give you a hint.
Not 100, but it was quite a high.
It was 24 prior to World War One. During World War One, how many were produced and flown in World War One? So it was 120. So there's a lot of them. They made lots of them, lots and lots of them.
Filled with hydrogen.
With hydrogen, yes, or with hydrogen.
Couldn't get helium from the Americans.
It was really before World War One. I don't think anyone was producing helium. I don't think they knew about it, but it was certainly after the First World War they got onto using helium.
Couldn't get it.
So here is one of the airship engines. So this is from 1908, made by Daimler. So it's a beautiful thing. Also out of interest was this thing. Sorry? Oh, they were big. Not very efficient. They were big engines. Yes. So here, it's a bit difficult to see, but there is some fabric off a Zeppelin from the First World War, and there are bullet holes in it. So a lot of them were shot down over the trenches. Obviously, when they flew over the trenches, they were a big target. So obviously, everyone took pot shots at them. So, and that was the problem. They couldn't actually do it until I've seen a podcast some years back about the guy that discovered that using incendiary bullets, putting phosphorus in them. So it actually set fire to the helium. Up until that time, they could punch holes in it, but there's so much helium that, look at it. This thing came back okay with that many holes in that small amount of fabric,
Yeah, they were in cells on the inside.
And there is one of the engine nacelles from a 1916 one. So they had the engines mounted inside those. And then we move on to the Graf Zeppelin. So the Graf Zeppelin was the biggest, at the time, the biggest airship constructed and built. So they built this in Friedrichshafen, and it was so big that there was only 18 inches between the top of the Zeppelin and the top of the hangar, even though the hangar was huge. And so it was 240 metres long, and it had 75,000 cubic metres of hydrogen, and the rest was something they called blow gas, which was also interesting. They thought about this. The problem with running those engines, they had 5 engines in it, 5 big engines in it. The problem with that was when they were flying, they'd use up fuel and they'd get lighter and they'd start going up. So then they'd have to purge the hydrogen to keep an equal attitude, and then at the end of the day, the week, when they refueled again, they needed a lot of hydrogen. So blow gas had just about exactly the same density as air. So it was a gas that they made from lignite, brown coal, and with the same density of air, it made very little difference of whether they had used any or none or all of the blow gas. So that's why they used that, which I thought was pretty clever. It cruised at 170 kilometres an hour. And this is the answer to one of them. It flew over 1.1 million miles, this thing. And not only that, it never killed anyone. This is what a record to fly over 1.1 million miles and not kill anyone. It did 144 Atlantic crossings, so it flew regularly from Germany, from Friedrichshafen down to Brazil and back. It flew around the Pacific and also did an Arctic trip. And there were some of the statistics of it. But after the Hindenburg disaster, we know about the Hindenburg, which was another Zeppelin that caught fire and burnt in the US in 1937. They withdrew it. New Jersey, correct? They withdrew the Zeppelin from operation just because of the PR with airships, and did nothing with it. But that was in 1937. But the Nazis requisitioned it, or not too sure what the word was, and they did 30 further flights with it between September 38 and August 39. So August 39. September 39 was the start of the Second World War. So the Graf Zeppelin, again, if you're interested in radar and electronic intelligence, is the Germans used this to try to work out what the British were up to with their chain home system, their radar system. So they flew the Graf Zeppelin, the military flew the Graf Zeppelin over and along the British coast with a whole lot of electronic gear in it to try to work out what the British were up to. They suspected it was radar, but at the end of the day, it was inconclusive because they didn't believe that the British had the technology to use radar at such, if you like, low frequencies. I think it was in the HF band, those train home systems. And for some reason, the Germans didn't think they'd ever do that. So they spent a lot of time and effort, but they failed.
They were doing some correlation with landlines, weren't they? They were bringing the signals together from different bases, from far apart, so they had a long baseline.
I thought they had a PPI display, a planned position indicator display. I thought an operator looked at it and he could see a line with showing distance out to targets. I thought, but I haven't done a lot of research in it, and some of the stuff you read is patently untrue, but yeah. I thought they had that. Anyway, the Graf Zeppelin had a gyro compass, and that was a switchboard for it, which it needed to doing the Arctic flight in particular because the magnetic compass would be totally inaccurate in the Arctic. So
You don't need to know which way's north.
Want to know how to come back though. So that was part of the original thing. Oh, it was, sorry. And at the beginning of the Second World War, Goering ordered the Graf Zeppelin to be scrapped for this aluminium. It was made of aluminium, so they wanted the aluminium for the war industry, so it was scrapped. So there's just bits and pieces left of it, including this. This is the bow of the Graf Zeppelin and the anchor mast cone. So that's the very front of it. That's where it all came together, right at the front. And here is one of the engine nacelles from it. So again, big engines. It was a 12-cylinder Maybach. Each of the engines of 33 litres. Talk about how big the engines were. They were big engines. And the mechanics in flight would have to put ladders out and go out to these engines to work on them. And just bear in mind that the engines, if you go back and look at the Graf Zeppelin, the engines, if you look up there, were off board. They're out there. So they had to put a ladder out and climb out onto the engines to work on them. Yes, I don't know what OH&S would say about that today. Now, here's the radio room. And notice here that I've taken some shots of, these are the actual photographs that I've taken of the interpretive displays there. So everything was in German up the top here, and they've dutifully translated that into English. Anyway, yes. So this is the radio operator's position here, and you can see in the photograph there's this thing here, which I'm unsure exactly what that thing is, but there it is there. And if you look in the next shot, they've got one of them there in the museum. So it's made by Telefunken, but I don't know what it is. I just don't know.
What does that involve saber though?
It was rubbish.
No,
Yeah. So the Graf Zeppelin flew around the world in 1929. William Randolph Hearst paid half of the cost of that, and he put 4 people on it. And so they're the 4 people he put on it. Lady Hay Drummond Hay Sounds like, talking about Monty Python names, that sounds like a Monty Python name, doesn't it? She was the first woman to fly around the world, and also the Australian explorer Hubert Wilkins. And so there's the answer to the next question. Hubert Wilkins was the first recipient of the Samuel Morse Medal. He was an Australian, and he did lots of exploring. He was in the First World War, he was wounded, fought in France, did a lot of exploring in the Arctic and the Antarctic, and he must have been a friend with William Randolph Hearst to fly around the world. It talked about the 3 radio operators on board, and it was a 1 kilowatt vacuum tube transmitter, although it was only 140 watts in the antenna. And if you look at that, it was all very low frequencies they were using, as per everyone was using in the day.
That's 100 to 600 kilohertz.
It's low. But they all were in the day. So that's some of the statistics of it. And they also had an RDF, a radio direction finding loop. Some more photographs.
What did they use for an antenna? They must have a pretty long antenna.
Yes, it talked about that. They had trailing antennas. It had a 390-foot long wire.
Even there, you wouldn't get much power into it, would you?
No, that's what it said. It was a 1 kilowatt vacuum tube transmitter, but they talked about 140 watts of antenna power, so pretty inefficient. There's the actual uniform owned by a fellow called Willie Speck, who was a radio officer. He flew on Zeppelins from World War I, and then including the Graf Zeppelin, and also ultimately on the Hindenburg where he lost his life. But that's one of his uniforms. He obviously wasn't wearing that one. Obviously. Okay. So that's move on. So we'll take it now, jump in time and space. So now, there's a vehicle I've never seen before. That has to be the world's smallest car, wouldn't it?
Smart one, isn't it? Compact smart car.
A smart car?
A one-seat car. Bologna in Italy. I went to Bologna. I've skipped all the rest of it, but ended up in Bologna. It was there. And here also went to the this basilica, which has, here's the answer to another one, the longest sundial in the world is there, and also ostensibly the oldest organ in the world is there. So there's part of the sundial sort of engraved in the floor. And it goes off over here and off over here and off over here. When I was there, I looked at it and tried to work it out because the sun was shining on that day. Didn't make a lot of sense to me, to be honest. But anyway, maybe if I spent more time.
One day a year.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, that's what they say, and they wouldn't lie. The Italians wouldn't lie, so we know that's true. Okay, so the next question is, we talk about leaning towers. Where is, some of the most leaningest large towers in the world? Everyone knows that.
Leaning, you say?
Leaning. The reality is,
It's in Montreal.
leaning in Montreal.
Yeah.
Well, there's in Bologna, they've got this tower here. There's two of them, a pair of towers. One's leaning at 4 degrees and one's at 1.3, as opposed to here, Pisa, it is 3.9 degrees. So everyone knows this tower. It's all to do with PR, isn't it? It's all to do with PR. But well, they're trying to. They've got it. Yeah, they've stopped it going further.
They've definitely stopped.
But still, this one here is 4 degrees. Which one do you say? That one, I say. So there's those pair of towers built back in medieval time, and both of them started tilting, which would have been a bit of a problem, I think, for the constructors. Anyway, there you go. Also in Bologna, I spotted this, which was interesting. So nice collection of horn reflector antennas, sugar scoop antennas. So these were co-invented by H.T. Fries, who also co-invented the rhombic antenna, and also the Fries formula for noise factor and noise temperature. Just showing some stuff there.
No bird sitting on the roof.
No, that might be getting a bit warm.
Getting very warm.
Roast chicken.
So, another observation. So I drove around a bit. So I drove through the Dolomites and so ended up in Bologna through the Dolomites and back again through southern Germany. So just driving through these huge, I don't know what I can say, sawmills, I guess is the word for them. Lots and lots of sawmills and lots of timber. And lots, although I didn't take any photographs, unfortunately, of houses that in this area, which is quite high in altitude and obviously gets cold in winter, there were thousands of these houses with huge stacks of firewood. Now, given that it's softwood, it obviously burns fast, not like a good Australian hardwood, but, you know, these thousands of houses would have a stack of firewood about the same size you'd fit into a normal garage. Huge amount of wood. And I'm just pondering, thinking, here in Australia, we talk about burning wood's a bad thing, but there it's like, go for it. I just found that curious.
You don't burn it, you freeze.
Here's an interesting thing here, was a maypole. So there's a few of these we saw. So this is, although this was in June, these are obviously maypoles left from May, left around there, which is, you know, interesting tradition. And in Vienna was this. This was in Five Guys. This is a chain that's in Europe, and I think it started in America. Not think it did. It started in America, in Europe, and this was their milkshake thing. And yes, someone spotted it. Bacon flavour. Bacon flavour milkshake. You've got to be kidding me. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that in. Curious. Next, I visited in Vienna, so now we're in Vienna. They've got this Museum of Military History, which is called this word here, which again I won't try to pronounce, this one here in Germany. This was purposely built in 1849. This is only one building. There's a whole complex of these buildings, beautiful architecture, absolutely stunning architecture. With their a couple of these buildings they used for this Museum of Military History, which is really interesting. So things that astounded me here was this thing, which was a French observation balloon from the 1700s that the Austrians had captured. Thinking, for heaven's sake, you know, from the 1700s, before Captain Cook had discovered Australia, that balloon the French were using in the battlefield. So, God, blimey, that just astounded me. They've still got it. And this thing here is one of Austrian's submarines. You can see it's the fin, incorrectly called the conning tower, but the fin of an Austrian submarine. And I pause. But I hear you say Austria is a landlocked country. Why have they got submarines? Prior to the First World War, under the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, they had access to the sea. So they had a navy, including submarines. Now, the next thing that blew my mind was this. So going through school, you learn all about this. You learn all about the start of the First World War. It was Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo. Here is the car that he was assassinated in, and there's the bullet hole. This actually didn't shoot him. This is the one that killed his wife. He got shot in the neck. So the assassin fired 2 bullets. Must have been the best shot in the world, that he fired 2 bullets and killed both his targets. I was absolutely gobsmacked to see that. You know, something I'd learnt about since primary school, but there it was in real life in this museum there. Also in the museum is there's a couple of guns used by the assassin, and I couldn't work out the translation. There was meant to be a hand grenade there. early on in that day, the assassins had thrown a hand grenade at him, but it had went under a car and injured some other people. I can't quite, the translation I couldn't understand. But there was a couple of handguns the assassin had. And then also, here is Franz Ferdinand himself. And also, here is the uniform that he was wearing when he died. And here's a chaise lounge that he was put out, laid at when he died. And here is, this is his uniform he was wearing, and you can see the bullet hole just right there. Right there. And you can see the blood on his uniform here. Thinking, oh, that's just, I was just amazed. Just absolutely amazed. So that triggered the First World War. Other examples was this Albatross aircraft produced in Vienna. Thought, it's interesting. Other things that interest me is this thing, projector ballista, for firing hand grenades. So again, this is First World War. So what they needed to do, obviously, both sides needed to try to get explosive devices into the other one's trenches. The problem with firing off conventional artillery is two. Firstly, it would make a loud bang, so you knew something was coming. And secondly, with the black powder used that day, you'd see the smoke, so you knew exactly where it was coming from. So you could target where it was coming from. So they developed a suite of weapons which were silent and also smokeless. So this thing was used for firing hand grenades into the opposing trenches. So this is, and I said it was interesting seeing the other side, because these are the Austro-Hungarian side, not the Allied side. So it's interesting seeing from their perspective. They had this thing. You see all the springs on it. The same idea, but again, it was a spring-loaded thing for lobbing hand grenades into trenches. They also then had a whole series of pneumatic ones which fired by compressed air. So this one, have a look at this thing. It had a range of 1.2 kilometres. So how about that for a range?
Bruce should see that, shouldn't he?
Yeah, that's a ripper.
Almost as good as your original potato.
So yeah, a pneumatic one. And there was another pneumatic one there. That was a 140mm one. A bit hard to see, but yeah. Yeah, called it a mine launcher. Other interesting things I found were these things. So this is showing stages in the production of revolvers. So there's two different revolvers there. One's the Army revolver, an 1898 Army revolver, and one is a semi-automatic pistol, a Steyr pistol. Now it starts with a solid block of metal and it's just machined. You just machine the metal. I just never really thought about it. They had this big gun here. It was so big it was hard to photograph. So this one is in fact, believe it or not, transportable. So it was a 380mm a siege howitzer, which was transportable. And what they used to do, they could break it down. It was made to be broken down into 4 different parts and transported by, this is the First World War, an electric truck. Believe it or not, an electric or 4 electric trucks would transport this thing. So I thought, wow, that's First World War. How amazing.
Artillerists.
Shell was 740 kilos.
It was huge. Want to take a guess what this is? It's a teleprinter. I like the keyboard. Looks like dun 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 dun. A 1906 Hughes teleprinter. Outside the museum, there are a few strange things that didn't have any explanatory tags of what they were, but they're obviously defensive. They look like one-man defensive things. You just go and hide in there. I don't know. This one here, you had to crawl on your hands and knees to get in, the wee little door there. So, strange, but there was no label saying what they were, which is unfortunate. I sort of think, what the devil? Obviously old, obviously aged. So I don't know whether they were First World War or Second World War or what they were from, but anyway.
Kid at school going.
And outside here they had a number of tanks. So this one was a Centurion bridge layer. So again, I'd seen movies of this thing. It would go along and just with hydraulics push the metal thing out and lay a bridge as it went to go over small creeks, gaps, ditches and things. So that was interesting. And then they've also got there a dedicated tank museum. So this is just in the tank museum itself. And again, it's very difficult to photograph because it's so crowded. As you can see from that shot, just how crowded it is. They're all just jammed in there. You've got so many tanks in there. And armoured personnel carriers and all sorts of things. So this one is... as you can see, this is a World War II tank destroyer, which they've got there. Yeah, made by Skoda. And this was used until 1973 with the Swiss Army. So you think, World War II stuff used until the 70s.
Tank destroyer.
This one was a prototype, strange-looking thing. There's another one. There were a number of these that I was attracted to because the manufacturer is Steyr Daimler Puch. And as Dave will remember, the first two vehicles I ever owned were Haflingers, which were made by Steyr Daimler Puch in Austria. So I never knew that Steyr Daimler Puch made tanks. So Steyr make weapons. In fact, the Australian Army weapon that they use is a Steyr. They call it the Oz Steyr, but it's made by Steyr. Daimler, Daimler's Daimler, and Puch made motorbikes. So, yeah, I never knew they made tanks and armoured personnel carriers.
Tim, look at the crew. It says 5 people. There's 3 ranger operators and 1 driver.
This was a command tank. So this one was used for the commander. So he was obviously commanding, tell them to do this, you tell them to do that, tell them to do this. Yeah, yes. Here's another variant of it, also made by them, which was an ambulance. And this one, you'll notice there it says equipped with an NBC overpressurised protection system. So that's nuclear, biological and chemical overpressurised protection system. So they had a positive pressure inside, so it could be used in nuclear, biological or chemical warfare scenarios.
Until they ran out of
Sorry?
oil.
Until they ran out of air, yeah.
Until 2017.
Yeah. Optimistic.
Anyway, lots of things. It's got tanks here that moved wave, but just using a rocket launcher on the top of a tank instead of a barrel with a conventional gun. That's okay. So that's a Russian T-55 tank. I think they're using those in Ukraine at the moment. And a lot of these tanks, you could look inside. Crowded. Not too pleasant. Leopard, so they are supplying Leopards. West Germany is supplying Leopards to Ukraine at the moment. So probably this one will probably go out of the museum and disappear and end up in Ukraine.
People think going to sea in a submarine for a couple of months is hard duty.
Yeah.
Living in one of these
Yes.
peaks of...
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yes, exactly. You're right. Self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. They've got interesting things. They're all sorts of interesting things. All sorts of different recovery vehicles and ambulances and APCs and M109 self-propelled howitzer. And then outside, here's another Russian tank destroyer. Got outside. So that's that bit of it. Now I've got more to go. If people are interested, I do have more.
Wait, there's more.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
The projector ran out of time.
No, it's only just begun, because in some ways I've kept the best to last.
You got to close the doors for this one.
So, so here we go. Here we go here. Here we go there. So here's +2, couldn't think of anything else to call it. So in Austria, they've got a technological museum. There's one thing that the Germans and the Austrians do really well, is these technological museums. So I've been there twice now over the. Sorry?
One in Munich.
The one in Munich is absolutely fantastic. The Deutsche Museum, yeah. So I went there a couple of times to this one. So they got things like, train inside. Oh, yeah, okay, that's great. But they got another train inside. They got multiple trains. So this one is what they call Ajax. The name's Ajax. This one was constructed in 1841. This train. So this is old. Huge machines. Huge. This was a part of a hydroelectric power systems. So half of that's underground, under the floor, where it was in the hydro system. Giant machines, just magnificent. There's looking down. So you can see there's another 2 trains there that we hadn't seen before.
Wow.
Just fantastic. And this one is a World War I Austrian aircraft that should have been destroyed at the end of World War I, but they hit it. So this is the only one in existence, this fella here. So that's an interesting one, due to its rarity. And this one is another one that blew me away. Here is one of actual Otto Lilienthal's gliders. This is what he flew with. You know, when I was in primary school learning about flight and the history of flight, and Otto Lilienthal did all that original work in aerodynamics, and there's one of his gliders. Thinking, God, couldn't believe it, could not believe it. So there it is in 1849. A CubeSat. So here was a CubeSat they had there. So we're going from the sublime to the ridiculous. It was interesting looking at a real CubeSat. Also behind it was this thing, which was a satellite navigation receiver. I don't know why the thing's so big. I was absolutely astounded at the size of that thing. And bear in mind, it was 2021, so this is, current technology. But I don't know why you need something that big for a satellite navigation receiver. I don't know.
Sure, they haven't doubled the length of the standoffs to make it visible.
Well, it determines the position of satellites, not the position of you.
I don't know.
That might be an upward facing radar or something.
I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like a display demonstration, doesn't it?
And this thing is another interesting thing. What they had in a number of cities, including Vienna, it became difficult to deliver letters due to congestion, so they put pneumatic tubes over the city. Now, I'm familiar with pneumatic tubes in a building, but in places like Vienna, they put pneumatic tubes over the city. So you could put a letter in at one end and away it would go, and by some magic it would end up at the other end of the city. So here is the diagram sort of explaining how part of it works. We'll get to in a second. And here are some of the pneumatic things that they fire down the tubes. And if you look at this drawing here, and then we look at this next shot, there it is. Bugging me dead. There's the thing. Sorry?
What year were they doing that?
Just let me have a look at this. Yeah.
So they had congestion in that.
So, but said by 1913 there were more than 50 pneumatic dispatch offices connected by about 82 kilometres of pipes. Amazing.
What if they're power the air pumps with?
Sorry? What do they pump it up with?
Power the air pumps with.
I don't know. Don't know. It's a good question.
We compress this somewhere.
In the museum there's a lot on. I just took a shot of a very small part of that radio broadcasting, but there was a lot of this radio broadcasting. They had a whole a 1960s television studio and all sorts of things there, which our ATV friends might be interested in. The TV studio they had there, old technology. Now another thing was this, which I spotted. I've never seen one of these in real life, which is an Adcock radio locator or radio direction finder. Now I'd heard about these things. So this one's from 1940. So you can see there's an antenna out at the side, but half of this one's missing, unfortunately. This one here, so there's half of it's there. So it's basically a dipole, but the other half, strangely, is not there. And so the thing, this would rotate around this base. It would rotate, and there's a guy sitting inside here, and there you can see he's got two antennas. So you'd use the phasing of them, so you'd be able to get a null, and the fellow sat inside here and peered into the screen, and would be able to get a radio location. So this they used all over America and also Hawaii, and so they were radio direction finding things like the U-boats off the east coast of America. They could RDF them with these things, as well as spies. If you read any books on spies in America, that's how they were finding with these things. And I'd read about them. I'd never knew anyone was still in existence. But there you go. So here it is there. So the operator would sit here, inside here on the chair, and rotate this whole thing. This whole thing would rotate with the antennas, and to be able to null out the signal, and then by connecting a few of them together, talking to his other buddies around the states, they could then localise where the transmission was coming from. So that was interesting. Hallicrafter's radio. Another interesting thing was this, looking at that, going, yeah, that's quite a pleasant looking thing. So this again was built in the 1700s before Captain Cook came to Australia. But what it is nowadays would call it a robot, an ottoman. Oh, thank you, that's it. So here's how it works if you wanted to build one. Don't know how you would do it, but what it would do, it would write. And here you can see it would write. The pen would write in the hand of that angel would write. And you see it's talking Technische Museum Wien, Vienna. And every few letters it would put the thing into the ink pot here and get new ink and write. Before Captain Cook came to Australia, they were able to work out how to build things like this. So you had to pre-program it. You'd pre-program the thing and away it would go.
How big was the buffer, Dick?
The buffer, it said it how many words it would do. It would do. That was in 1760. Can't read it. 68. Thanks, Eve. 68. You could store 68 letters.
People were quite into their automatons. They were kind of a parlour trick type. Show off your friends and stuff.
Too much time.
Amazing. A Bellerio monoplane. We all know about Bellerio, first man to fly across English. There, Bellerio monoplane. Good grief. And then looking down from the upper stories, you can see the size of that woman there, some of the machines they've got there. Here is one of the original diesel engines. This is 12 months after he first invented the diesel. He built this one. So 1898. So it was the first diesel engine built in Austria, and it used compressed air to do the injection. So that's why the steel compressed air cylinders are here, to do the injection. It's pretty amazing. Other machines, this one's not dangerous at all. Rotating machines, all exposed with fingers and alternator, and not dangerous at all. Very, very little chance of dying if you got too close to that. One-cylinder steam engine, 1856. Beautiful stuff. There's a cutaway version of a triple expansion steam engine. Shows what's inside it.
Oh, the valve system's nice.
The what, sorry?
The valve system.
The valve system, yeah.
Yeah, the valve gear, yeah.
Sliding valve gate.
They still use them.
And here's another Ottoman. So this one was 1849, so this is a modern one. This one would play the flute. Weird, but amazing. Fire engines, old fire engines, amazing sort of stuff. Now, we're going to jump locations, and we're suddenly going to jump to Helsinki, mainly for Russell. Russell, you paying attention?
Absolutely.
Around the harbour of Helsinki, there were lots of old wooden boats. Wow, how good was that? I see Leo's looking there. Leo's got a smile on his face too. These wooden boats, magnificent. By jingos. I was in Helsinki for a while. I was in a conference in Helsinki, and I thought I'll go to Estonia. So I investigated and get ferries, regular ferries to Estonia, ferries that run every 2 hours. And when we're talking about ferries, these are the ferries they're talking about, like ocean liners. Good grief.
It take longer to fill it with people.
Ah, blimey. Anyways, went to Estonia. And in Estonia, they liked it. Two strange, well, I don't want to say strange. One strange thing is that the Estonians like to think that they're a Nordic country. And I thought that was a little bit odd, but they like to think that. They like to think they're aligned with the Nordic countries because at once they were ruled by Sweden. That's their justification. So therefore, they're not a Baltic country, they're a Nordic country. Okay, we'll let that one go. And secondly, they look upon themselves as being a very high-tech country, which I think every country does. But they, I did a tour, I did a walking tour, and they went through a list of things that were invented by Estonians, and one of them, the only one that I can remember, was Skype. Apparently an Estonian invented Skype. So, okay. And there's a number of other things, but because I'm not 18 years old, I never heard of these other things, which are apparently fantastic, so invented by Estonians. And the guide also mentioned, she said, have you seen this delivery system? So instead of using deliver you, or what is it? Instead of using DoorDash, in Estonia, what they've got is this. Robots. And I was walking one day, I did a couple of kilometre walk to the Maritime Museum, and I came across these two. I thought, well, there we go. These robots are used for putting people out of work instead of...
They got red lights and...
I don't know what they do with traffic lights. I don't know.
I think the protesters come and turn them on their side or on their back.
Leave me alone.
But, yeah.
Just leave me alone.
Yeah, it does.
Interesting things.
Food turns up at the front door.
Yeah, you just order it and it just turns up automatically.
What's it got, a pizza in it or what?
It's cold.
Yeah, probably. The other thing that I found interesting from my perspective coming from Australia, in both Estonia and also in Finland, was the amount of Nazi memorabilia you can buy. Lots and lots of Nazi memorabilia. So they're typically sold in, because I was only in the tourist spots, so typically in antique shops, and the owners there, no photograph. So I took a few shots through the front windows, but lots of medals, rings, daggers, lots of... I can't tell you how much memorabilia, Nazi memorabilia that they've got in these countries selling it. You know, coming from Australia, you never see it. Certainly not in Germany. Forbidden. But in Finland and Estonia, it was just, whatever you want, you could buy.
Just don't bring it back here.
Just thought that was interesting. Strange things, including stick grenades. They had these old stick grenades and looking rusted as buggery. It looks like they dug up in the backyard. They probably had. And I thought, why would you ever want to buy one of those things? Seriously?
Potato mashers or something they call them.
Yeah. They gotta be joking. It's another. I said, well, I could only take shots through the front windows. They wouldn't let you taking shots inside, but lots of it. Estonia. I went here. Here used to be a seaplane base in these hangars, these huge hangars, because the weather's so cold, I guess, they could pull them in there and work on them, regardless whether it was snowing or not. Here's the side. So this is one side, and that other one was the other side, and the water's just down this direction here. The bay's just right there. The seaplane harbour, they call it, just right there. So the seaplane hangars have now been refurbished as a museum, but these are the short seaplanes. They used to, Estonian Air Force used to fly and used to work in these hangars, as you can see. So they're bought by Short Brothers, who did the first production aircraft designs. So they bought these short 184s, and Estonians flew them for a while. But nowadays, as I said, this is now a museum. Outside the museum, there's old ships like this, and this is a World War II, an American ship that was eventually in the 1990s was given to Estonia, and the Estonians sailed it across the Atlantic, so that became the first Estonian government ship to sail across the Atlantic, and they used that for some decades, and it's now been retired in the museum. There's an old icebreaker from over 100 years ago, and then inside the museum at all, there's lots of interesting stuff. A lot of Soviet stuff as well. I guess no real surprise. A lot of Soviet stuff. Again, just never see it. Never see this stuff here in Australia. A lot of Soviet artillery pieces and guns and things. Soviet stuff. And then also, they have to be the world's best sea mine collection. So this one in here was a fixed mines they used for fixed fortress protection in the 1800s. Now, we used to have this. Remember down at Clifton Gardens, from the harbour from Clifton Gardens, across the other side, we had a system like this. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was exactly this one. We had fixed mines across the harbour. So if a ship came in, a fellow could watch, and when he got to where one of the mines was, how we knew where they were, I don't know, he could then press one of these buttons and detonate it. But apart from that, there are all sorts of other, as I said, must be the world's best collection of sea mines they've got there. Unbelievable, all the different mines, and all documented. So this one here is a Russian river mine. So it was only for up to about 4 metres depth of water and only a couple of kilograms of explosives, but just a small mine. So they'd obviously put hundreds of these in rivers. Just all sorts. Now, they talk about this submarine, which we'll get onto, and this submarine, which I'll show you in a moment, was purchased by the Estonians, and it could lay mines. So that's what this is talking about. This is what's in this mine section. So there's mines. This is a galvanic river mine. Finns, I don't know whose it was, but the Finns found it somewhere. This is part of a combination German and Russian mine. All sorts of stuff.
Does galvanic refer to the trigger mechanism?
Yes, yeah.
Does that work?
Yes. It would somehow or other detect when there's metal near it. So there's the ones with horns on it would require a mechanical hit to go off. There's these galvanic ones that somehow or other, I'm not too sure, detect. Magnetic? I think it was something to do with magnetic. I think it was magnetic. And then there's acoustic ones. So they've got all the series here, all the series of mines. So this is an acoustic deep water mine against submarines. So there you go. Richard, you would have You'd have been taught about these, wouldn't you? Soviet submarine mines? Not saying anything, okay. Being discreet. So another Soviet mine. And the self-propelled bottom mine. So these are interesting. They drop these ones on the bottom and leave them there. And when they detect sound and things, off they go. They fire themselves up and chase the sound. So I'm not too sure how you drop the thing up without it chasing you back home again. But anyway. Yeah. So this one was washed up. So again, it doesn't say whose it is, but I guess it's a Russian one if it's
1990.
not saying what it is. And so here's some more inductive and acoustic mines. Depth laid to depth of 800 metres. And they've got a submarine there. So here's the submarine inside this building. So this submarine was ordered from the British in 1934, and it was built by Vickers and Armstrong and was launched in 1936, and so used by the Estonians since then. So you think about it, it was launched in 1936, and we're using it up until, recently. But yeah, fantastic. You could climb all over it and inside it. So just shot inside, and you can see there's no one else there. The place is deserted. So it was good to have a clamber out. It's all very, very nice and clean inside and well lit. Really, really nice display. So there's the engine. Again, exposed tappets and rocker gear. Absolutely fine.
On the switchboard.
Switchboard. Oh. Torpedo tubes.
Yeah.
Right, so that's it for Estonia. We're now back to Vienna. So in Vienna there is this a large amusement park with this Ferris wheel, and I went there for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons was, has anyone seen the 1948, I think they made it, movie called The Third Man? Yeah. So it was a classic black and white movie with Orson Welles in it. It was filmed in Vienna, and the place was still bombed to the shit, wasn't it? It was just rubble everywhere. It's a very good movie, But there is a section of it where it's filmed on this Ferris wheel. This is a very historic Ferris wheel. So I went to have a look at the Ferris wheel. So I had to go on the Ferris wheel, and on the Ferris wheel, went up to the Ferris wheel, and I thought, what is that in the distance? And I got my camera out and zoomed in and saw that, and I had an epiphany, and I thought, I know what that is. I know exactly what that is. There. Any idea what that is? No, it's suddenly, I saw it, I wasn't even thinking about it. I suddenly thought, it's a World War II flak tower. So in Vienna, and I again had read about these things, with the bombers, they would say they would avoid these flak towers. So they built these huge flak towers in places like Hamburg and Berlin and Vienna and Stuttgart, I think. And so they built them in pairs, these huge concrete monoliths, and they built them in pairs. One was called a G tower, which had the guns on it, and close to it was an L tower, which had a radar system in it, spotlights, and also was the command centre. So the G towers here in Vienna, if you have a look at that, 177 feet tall. It was armed with 8 128mm guns, so 8 5-inch guns, so they had an effective range of 20 kilometres, and had 32 20mm guns. So these things were worth avoiding. So if you read any of the books from World War II, the bombers, when they're moving, would give these, where the flak towers were, a wide berth. And the concrete walls were ostensibly 11 feet thick, but some of them up to 23 feet thick. And the problem is because they're so thick, They can't get rid of them. They do not know how to demolish these things. And they're built in residential areas, so they can't just go, oh, we'll just blow them up. You can't do it. So they've been procrastinating since 1945 about what to do with these things. They're just huge concrete monoliths. But I thought, okay, I'm going to have a look. So there were 6 of them, a total of 6, 3 pairs of them built in Vienna. So I tracked them down. So this is one of them.
Never again.
Yep, never again. And that's, you can see this one's where the guns were mounted around here. And this one was the radar tower. This square one was the radar tower. And this is interesting, that when the Russians came through, they got the biggest artillery piece they had and fired a shell at it to see what happened. And yeah, it punched a small hole in it. And that was it. They gave up. They tried one. They had the biggest gun. They fired at forget it. Forget it.
Probably people safe inside, but they're all deaf now.
Yes, so they're also air raid shelters, so they could fit 10,000 people inside there. Did I say that? Had it somewhere. They had a hospital inside there. They're massive things, massive. This one I went to, this was another one of them, and I was lucky enough when I turned up, this truck turned up, and I was taking photographs, and some people came out and were mucking around, and they in fact opened this door up here. This is one that is used, and they use the Museum of Contemporary Art, use it as a storage facility because it's so much concrete, there's so much thermal inertia that it's got a constant temperature in there. So they use it as a storage facility. So this is inside it, but that's at the door. No, you will not go through the door. You can stand there. Yes, you can stand there. Do not come through the door. So I wasn't allowed to go through the door. So I had to stand there and take photographs inside. But that was a privilege enough. And that's the L tower associated with that one. But yeah, the huge things. This one is the only one that's really used. So back in the 50s, they converted this one, which is in Esterhazy Park, into a public aquarium and an outside climbing wall. So I don't have a shot of the side where you climb up it. So that's the only one that's really used. The rest of them, as I said, one's used for storage, and the rest of them it's forbidden. It's locked up, not allowed to go there, which is a bit of a pity. That's a nighttime shot of that one. So that's interesting things. And the next one is I decided I wanted to visit this little place here. So this little place, people call it by many different names. So originally, it's in German, it's called this. So I'll leave somebody who speaks German can pronounce that one. Keldsteinhaus, let's call it that. And we call it Eagle's Nest. So it's also called Kelstein and Obseliger and Berchtesgaden or Berghof. So it's all sort of around there. So yeah, Berchtesgaden's down there. That's the town of Berchtesgaden down the bottom there. Hitler had a place down there called Berghof, which was down just, in fact, it's close in here. I did a photo, but I haven't got it in this presentation. Down the bottom here, where he had a house and Göring had a house and all the other sycophants had houses. So Hitler bought a place here in the late 30s as a sort of a holiday house. It's a very attractive part of the world, and so he spent a lot of his time there apparently as well. Not so much up here, despite what the myth says. They built a road up to it. So for his 50th birthday, they built this. And included this road. You can't drive up this road. You have to go on a tour for a number of reasons. Number one, they are concerned about turning this into some sort of Nazi shrine or something. So you have to go on a formalised tour with approved tour guides. You have to go on their bus, which is specially modified because it's so steep and these sharp turns to get up to it. When I say get up to it, you get up to this area here where you stop, and then there's a tunnel. And so you have to, this is as far as the road goes, so you have to then go through 400 feet into this tunnel. Hitler will get driven, apparently in his car, would drive into the tunnel, but you walk, as a tourist, you walk 400 feet into the tunnel through here. This is all done by, they had Italian stonemasons they brought in to do all this work. Beautiful work. And then there's a big lift, polished brass, marble, Venetian mirrors in it, and that also goes up 400 feet. So it goes in 400 feet, then goes up 400 feet, and then it comes out in the building itself. Actually, in the building, it comes out. And the view's absolutely stunning. It really is. There's just no other word for it.
You were lucky.
Oh, it's a beautiful day. Yeah, I was lucky.
Drive around the side to the very bottom and look straight up at that road, and it's literally like up there, the little bus is doing its thing.
Yeah.
You can barely see it so far above you.
It's see how far down the valley is.
Yeah.
And this is inside it, and inside they say it's the same as when Hitler left, whatever that means. But anyway, apparently that's it. This marble fireplace was donated by Mussolini to Hitler, and you can see, although it's hard to see in this, I don't have it zoomed in, but it has damage on it. So when the Allies captured it, in particular the 101st Airborne were there, they chipped a bit of these bits of the marble off to take back as souvenirs. So it's quite chipped.
It's like all of the Italian architecture of that period. It's huge.
It's huge.
It's
Yeah.
gigantic. Mussolini had no taste.
Another room there is called Eva Braun's room. Still exactly the same, apparently. And here I didn't actually get to see this, and I didn't know about it until after we had gone, talking to the tour guide. This is a U-boat engine, and it's still there. This was his photograph. So I took a photograph of his photograph. This is what they have there and used to supply power to it. So it's a U-boat engine with a generator. And I would have liked to have seen that, but anyway, next time. Where are we? Okay, so that's the end of that. Next. Here's another jump in space and time. Budapest. I've got a friend of mine in Budapest, Don VK2BT. And so I've both those trips I mentioned before, I've been and stayed with Don and had a bit of a hunt around in Budapest. In Budapest, they've got this place. This has various names, but it's basically a cave system under the top of Pest. There's a mountain and a castle, and up the top of that, there's this cave system under it. So here is a map of the cave system, and has of course it's probably natural caves, but it's been really extended. So in the Second World War, they moved into this, and I mentioned where was the second longest siege in history. Where was it? I've given it away. Budapest. Budapest was the second longest siege in history. There's over 1 million Russian troops laid siege to Budapest. So they withdrew towards the end into this cave system, and were in there. After the Second World War, it was again used with the Hungarian uprising against the Russian occupiers in 1956. Again, the uprising sort of retreated into the cave system. Then after that, the Russians used it as a nuclear and chemical biological sort of bunker. So back in the day, this is all models and things. This is what it looked like. There's a hospital set up in there. And there's just room after room after room after room. There's all sorts of stuff in there. This is Soviet-era decontamination equipment, air decontamination. So many gas masks, they're selling them. There's so many there. What to do with radioactivity stuff. all different sort of gas masks, and you can see the different, depending on what you need to protect yourself against. You've got the different filters, different canister filters for different whatever it is. Gas masks, they've got a few. Suits, decontamination suits. It's just on and on it goes. You've got a barber shop in there. More air decontamination bits and pieces. On and on and on. Its own generator set to supply power. So that's interesting. That was very interesting. Next in Budapest, I'd heard about this. I'd read, I'd seen on TV one of those abandoned engineering places about this thing called the Red Star Graveyard in Budapest. I thought, I want to go and see Don. Let's go and find this. So he'd never heard of it. It is not well known in Budapest. So we did some research, found where it was. Had to climb over some barbed wire fences. The first one set off an alarm, and there was loudspeakers, and we won't talk about that. Anyway, we got into the place eventually and had a hunt around. And what it is it's a huge, I don't know what you'd call it, a marshalling yard? A huge marshalling yard that's now completely wrecked, overgrown, deserted, as you can see by this. And in Budapest, all the plants grow so well. It's really just like jungle grows up there. So there's these big, huge, where they put trains in. These doors are welded shut, which is interesting. But looking through the windows, you can see this. And so here, the Red Star comes from these Russian steam trains with a red star on them. So that's why it's called the Red Star Graveyard. There's steam trains and things inside here. And just wandering around, there's just stuff, just deserted, just rotting away. Just completely abandoned.
Is it fair to say they didn't really want you poking around in there?
Absolutely correct.
Is it radioactive?
Absolutely correct.
You didn't get shot or anything?
Well, to jump to the end, our impromptu tour was cut short when we were discovered and escorted off the premises with a lot of things like that. So, yes. Who knows? So there's strange things there. Like this there was I don't know what you'd call it, a box. And I went and had a look at the outhouse, and there's a set of steps leading down there, and there's a door, and there's a tunnel under there. But I didn't go through that. I thought, I'm not going down there. No. So goodness knows what that was. I don't know. How about this? How about a train with a jet engine attached to the front of it? So either it was made to go really fast in reverse, or I think it was to getting the snow away with a jet engine. I mean, yeah, okay. Never seen that before.
Snowblower. Extreme.
Another one was this thing. See this green train carriage there? What caught my eye, there's lots of carriages, what caught my eye was this ladder. So there's a ladder over here. I thought, why has it got a ladder over there? You wouldn't need a ladder over there. So that caught my eye to go and have a closer look. And here's another shot of it from a bit further away. It's just a carriage. Just a carriage.
Just soldiers to go sit on top and go.
No, it's not. Inside it, it's a steam engine. It's a camouflage steam engine to make it look like a railway carriage. So inside it, you can see the boiler here. There's a boiler inside there. And if you go back and have a look, you can just work out, there's the funnel, which isn't really a funnel, it's truncated with a roof, but that's where the funnel is there.
But the loco, it doesn't get targeted for being a
So it doesn't get targeted. Exactly.
Put one up front and
Well,
one at the back.
I don't know. I've never seen or heard of that. But because it was so close and confined, it was really hard to get photographs. So these are the water containers for it. So it held obviously water in there for the steam engine. That's down one side of the boiler, looking down one side. that's moving right back then behind where those water containers are, looking back at the boiler with the ends taken off. So that I found interesting. And then there was this. Then there was this.
Animals. People.
This is bringing a bit of a bummer to the evening, but let's keep going. So it's a cattle truck, but however, what is strange about it is, number one, barbed wire over the windows, and number two, steel windows that, although you can't really see, not the best photograph, you can only open and close them from the outside. And then looking inside, there are attachment points for chains on the inside. And then if you needed any further hints about what it is, so where is the largest synagogue in Europe? Budapest. So as a proxy of where it used to have the largest Jewish population in Europe is Budapest. Used to. So that was confronting. Let's put it that way. That's confronting. So while we're on a downer, let me keep going with something else that's a downer. This is the last subject, I think. Also in Budapest is this. So there's my friend Don looking his best grim look on his face. In Budapest there is what's called the House of Horror. And this was the KGB torture chambers in Budapest, which is now a museum. And so they've got these people here, and they've got video recordings of them talking about their experiences in there. So that is a luxurious cell. It gets worse, let me tell you. There was this one that Don's standing in. Notice how deep it is. You cannot sit down. The cell's about this deep and about that wide. Lock the door and you stand up there. You cannot sit down. You cannot. There was another one that was exactly the opposite, that you couldn't stand up. It was only a low thing like this big. But I didn't get a photograph of that. I was looking for the photograph and I couldn't find it. There was this, the interrogation room. Notice the grill where they'd wash down afterwards. There was this. The noose. If they didn't like the answers that you gave, that was the end of you. So, yeah. Okay, so as I said, I apologise for the downer towards the end, because this is the end. This is the last shot I've got now. Hopefully bring it up a bit. In Vienna there is the Dom Museum. So Dom's not here tonight, but anyway, here's the Dom Museum in Vienna. So that was just a whole scattering, as I said, eclectic things that interest me. Hopefully you found some of that interesting.
Back to the Meridian, you call it the sundial in Bologna.
Yes, yeah.
Cassini was the guy who set that up. He moved the melon up very, very high in the dome, and the very long cast meant that he was able to meet that dome with the sun as it changed from summer to winter, which was the confirmation of Kepler's heliocentric view. So that was important astronomically, because that was where Kepler's view, which was quite heretical, that the sun was at the centre of the solar system, the Earth went around it. It was Cassini who confirmed that at that site.
Well, but
it went to work for Louis XIV.
It still could have been sun-centric, but the Earth could have not been a circular orbit, could have been on an elliptical orbit. It still would have provided that.
Well, anyway, the sun was orbiting the Earth, according to the Church.
Yes, and I know what the dogma said. Yeah.
Confirmed Kepler's equations.
So the showground, or the place where you went for the big convention.
Friedrichshafen, yeah.
Was that an airport, or was that?
It's right on the edge of the airport.
It was
that shot that I showed you. Yeah, it's on the boundary. It's on the boundary of the airport. Yes,
okay. So it kind of looked like it.
Yeah.
It looked like a big aircraft factory or big facility?
That aerial photograph I didn't take, obviously. That was a stock photograph I took. It must have been an air show that was on, I think, with all those aircraft parked there. Yeah.
What do they use the buildings for when it's not a radio show?
It's all sorts of shows. If you look up now, they've got shows, non-stop shows. Every week there's every week there's a different show there.
On the edge of the lake, far
Yeah.
flying,
Yeah.
literally.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, Tim.
Eclectic, different. Some of it's confronting, but there's bits and pieces that I found interesting. That,
Different parts of the world.
yeah, never seen.
Dome, I presume it's near the cathedral.
It's still there.
I'm not too sure what that's meant to mean.
Oh, it's
The
the...
dome means the dome, it's the cathedral.
Yes, it's near
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Red Star Graveyard.
Yeah.